If I could say one thing about the Necromancer, Path of the Descended Masters by Kendall of Become a Living God, it would be that this book is written in such a way that it seems that he really has worked this out as his spiritual path. That he really does practice the things therein. Now, the back says, kill the false prophetic gurus. Now, what do they mean by false prophetic gurus? Well, just like the other Become a Living God material, the authority that he claims is very much grafted into looking up to E.A. Quetting as a mentor. Timothy Donahue is mentioned as well. Orly Stewart was the copy editor of this, and she was part of the campaign, along with Curtis Joseph, which is also mentioned in this book, to get E.A. Quetting's material removed from YouTube. And there was another guy, some dark-haired guy named George, and they did list the reasons, and it had nothing to do with Temple of Blood. It had nothing to do with, oh, well, they're just a different religion. They had the reasons, but, you know, that's neither here nor there. But especially that phrase, kill it, you know, it's like, what's that supposed to mean? Now, a disclaimer points out that this is adult and it's not legal or medical advice, and they don't want to take any responsibility for anything that you do in regard to this, which is, I mean, spiritually, regardless of, you know, what headers you have, that doesn't really work. Now, I don't think, based on chapter 10, that Arabic is one of the languages spoken by any of the people involved in producing this book. Now, I mean that for other reasons than that. When one looks at this graphic here, I am not getting it to show up. But that opening graphic you have for that chapter, you don't have the shada there. So yeah, the hidden, a John or the John, but Jinn is the plural. So, but Asariel Kurbat does good art. I'm not saying that. Now, not necessarily in the order of the chapters which we see listed, but some things in authentically responding to a book like this, a person would answer for themselves whether or not they are taking the advice of this book. Is what pleases you what is best for you? How do you establish the external circumstances? What do the other entities want? What does the feminine and negative have to offer? Are you willing to be redirected? What aspects of religion do you want a use of beyond any type of spirituality? Of course, by religion, I don't mean church, but the spiritual relationship. What is survival among death? Are the costs worth it? Is one person's guiding spirits for everyone? How is our spiritual journey transpersonal? How do life and death work together? Is Saturnal the category of all such scripture? What is new with such paths, and what are we really becoming? What are the hidden creations with free will which transcend human life? And so I will say something regarding each chapter here. People who work out their own spiritual path, especially when we're doing something more than trying to be a conservative or a fundamentalist. And it's not just some pick and choose sort of glumping together of spiritual paths. There's backstory. Now, when it comes to certain things that come up, you see certain things in the backstory. Birth defects or birth trauma, childhood illness, horrible things or of like loss or trauma or something that people have gone through. And the question, of course, is which of these are necessary? Well, whichever gives the person the experience that they are, going to need to make the choices that they're capable of, that they have the proper guidance, you could say. Now, when it comes to astrology, we can all look at, no matter how common or rare a particular astrological, astronomical opinion, position is that we put our astrology on. There's stuff to work into whatever path you're going to be on. And well, dangers. Certain things that we take part in, especially spiritually, they have effects that are beyond the ritual. Like people want to get themselves charged up or drained or whatever as part of the rituals. And, there are things about it. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, we have that thing, that type of worship you do, it directly affects the sort of afterlife you have, the sort of person you become. And this text before me definitely agrees on that point. Yeah, and taking another look at these illustrations by Kendall, I don't know if he was a cool kid in high school or just, the sort of person that one would have thought was cool because of the art they did in their spare time, in their notebooks and stuff. Now, when it comes to grimoire magic, this is more of a story than it is a grimoire. I mean, they like to call everything a grimoire, but this is, there's a couple grimoires in the middle of this, but yeah, it's too much of a story for that. Now, Kavan is a name that he gets in here, and I'm not sure which name that is, but there comes a time on the spiritual path where you have experiences, and those experiences redirect you. Like I pointed out at Klamath Falls in Oregon, that I had experience where I didn't just believe I had a soul anymore, that I was the soul. I experienced it, and from that point onward, I was on a different path. But people certainly work their way towards the actual practices, or they practice with the practices until they get better. You know, ones may have seen, no, I'm not sure that it's, yeah, I'm not getting it to show up, but you may fast or gather things or whatever as part of your way towards performing some big ritual or opening yourself towards a series. And we start with a meditation on skulls, and something that can take a person, something that a person can take with them. And it's supposed to, it's what they call spiritual death. Spiritual death is, I guess, the goal of all this, as far as what the Christians speak of. And a person, gradually becomes some of these things, like that one guy that worked on the atom bomb project talking about death I have become, and quoting something from the Mahabharata or something like that. We get the idea that imagination is used to align. Imagination isn't just something that you go into fantasy land, but you know, you think of possibilities, and that's sort of the point. But you should gradually work yourself towards something. In this case, it's the connecting and identifying with death. So very left-hand path, you could say. And people imagining themselves surrounded in the realms of the dead, and the rotting of one's flesh, and or other stuff that can go on like that. And immersing oneself in that can be a sort of a baptism. Now, we're not into all this stuff about human bone powder, but at some point there's going to be a lot of throughout this book, there's a lot of talk about human bone powder. And how do you get all this human bone powder? It's not like we live in a country where there's sky burials and cremation pyres, and there's people who sneak off with parts of that as like a regular thing. Just like the previous book on necromancy that I've talked about here, you're going to want to use different different chants, different collecting graveyard dirt. Although there's a lot of issue with that. If people see you in the graveyard collecting dirt, the graveyards often won't let you back, or maybe there's some law locally, so you want to look at your what's going on with that. I'm not sure where some of these things come from, whether he wrote all his own, or he wrote all his own and pieces that he used for his invocations and evocations. Anuas is his the chief spirit for him. And one of the things that you find when it comes to people worshiping other than the transcendent God is that there's this urge to just try to get other people to do it. Now, yeah, even monotheists that don't personify deity, they do that too, but not in the same way. Now, become a living God people and stuff like that in general tend to make a lot of fuss about, oh no, I'm not really worshiping. Yeah, all this sexual fluid and blood and all that sort of stuff that I dedicate, and all these other practices that would be more recognizable if they were done in a church or something. But Connor Kendall doesn't seem to go into that nonsense. So, just like the Grimorium Verum, there's use of a bloodstone, but you do want to get different stuff, have an altar. Now, a traditional witch or a spiritualist or whatever would have three types of altars. One for just straight up devotion, usually a lot of sympathetic magic, you could say, particular colors and all that sort of stuff related to the entities that a person is going to involve oneself in, the very symbolic that way. A grimoire based altar, and an altar related to death and the ancestors and that sort of stuff. So, but this is pretty much entirely focused on the third. Now, see, it's that on page 25 is what some people could consider concerning. Is now animal sacrifice. As one knows on my channel, I talk a lot about that. So it's page 24 and 25, but it says, whatever it is, it's up to you as long as it's living. As long as it's a living animal. Well, humans are a living animal, but it doesn't exactly say to do that to humans. But that thing on the end, that's sort of implying something. But so is the cost worth it? Because something in you, it's like something in you dies when you just kill something. It's not about it being eaten or whatever, and it's so it's different than what you see in a monotheist sacrifice. Although in the Bible there's talk about burning corpses, or perhaps corpses that are part of that. But just like there was a psychological skull that was being carried around, here is the talk of carrying around the skull of the animal that you use. And knowing the different names related to death, or deities of death, it's the sort of thing that Carl Gustav Jung would have brought about. Now, I would not say that everything regarding death is saturnal, and that death rituals would be such. But you don't just pray, according to this text, to pray. You want to become, you want to open your senses. So yes, you're taking favor, but you're opening yourself to the themes Now, tools, you can just grab any tool towards your spiritual practices, right? Well, it makes a difference when you have dedicated certain items in particular ways. Blades, the flames, or the place that you put the flames, where you're going to store things permanently or as part of a dissociation. How you're going to see yourself as a new being. Of course, we're talking, it's a Become a Living God book. So, the idea is almost like you're a deity, like, oh, well, you're the deity of your own universe, and you're calling up all these entities. They got the Kabbalah. Clip off is, it's a little more than shells and stuff. Like, well, this is the evil side or something like that. I'm not. We'll get into that more. It's clearer when there's the mention of the jinn. I've done a series of now jinn refers to all these male and female, the acausal as they're called. It refers to all of them. But I think he generally gets the point that which a lot of people don't. It's like, oh, the jinn are the fire ones. It's like, no, see, they're all the elementals. They're all the planetaries. They're all these male and female deities, the real beings behind these stories. That's what they are. Now, by real beings too, I mean, the imaginations, the devatas, the parts of yourself that align to the various light beings and fire beings. Yeah, Of course, they call on Azrael, the angel of death, and ways to find out how to have your own whispers of what your name is for the afterlife or other than this life. One thing that I've heard when it comes to this working with angel stuff or working with saints in the realm of the dead stuff is that to some it's even more blasphemous than calling up the demons, either as a demonologer or as a carcist, because it's like, well, you're claiming that these things that are supposed to, like the lightnings, are not supposed to have any free will. There's a lot of stories about them having gender and all that other stuff, but they're actually really beyond that. Now, people will say it's more blasphemous because they're like supposed to be God's perfect entities, but you're claiming no, I can override that. So make of that what you will. There's definite talk about use of intoxicants in here, but basically, just alcohol one sees. Well, alcohol and cigarettes, of course. Santa Muerte has attributes sort of like Hindu ideas of goddesses, right? Because the red, black, and white, the use of something like olive oil or almond oil as a base. Mineral oil, I suppose, is something that's used here. Flowers, but because well, I'd say that flowers represent something that doesn't last long and the ephemeral nature of life, but You might want to have stuff for food. Coins are important, particular colors of candles. And as much as you can learn the formulas in this book, as a rule, just like what it says with Santa Muerte, you should be able to customize your ritual actions here. And the crushing, because is the behavior that goes in well with this. So crushing your own herbs and powdering the stuff that you're going to use in your own rituals. One, it will last longer and be fresher. But two, it reminds one of, rubbing out life. Dragon's blood is particularly expensive, but it is something that has its time and place. So if you have a little of that, that's good for rituals like this. And particular, this okay, you got to get, when you talk about 3 a.m. or 3:33 a.m. or that sort of stuff, it's not about the time on the clock. It's about the divisions of the night, the last third of the night, the last third of dusk to dawn, the last quarter of the night, the last quarter of dusk to dawn. And by dusk to dawn, I mean the twilight disappears on average about an hour and a half after sunset and starts having those horizontal lines of twilight about an hour and a half before sunrise. So that's what I mean. A lot of people don't know what that dusk and dawn are. And you don't have to buy special salt. You can say you could just burn your own salt. But the sooner that you embrace the fact that you're going to die and others are going to die, just be comfortable with the fact that that's just part of existence, the better. Now the names that I have for graveyards is sort of like the mantra for it, but I'm not, calling up the dead to speak to me or something like that. If something happens, something happens. But Ren's Anuak has a sigil that kind of reminds you of a bat with a hook, and it's thought of as extraterrestrial, interdimensional. Again, aliens, jinn, same thing, right? Devron, I don't know what to make of it. It's kind of like a bird, like it's spitting and it's splatting somewhere. I don't know what to say about that one. But that's like a priest of sorts. Senu Nar has a sigil that's kind of like one of those weird outfits they used to have on those Victoria's Secret fashion shows. Like if the panties stretched out somewhat, like I don't know. But that's what it makes you think of. But it's supposed to be, just a fire and a relation to the realms. Now there's more said here. I'm just Arneth has a sigil like one of those like something off a video game, puzzle, because you gotta get the movement right or something like that. And it's like some sort of warlord. But I think these three spots here represent like the lower spheres. You know, like that thing in the book of the Book of the Dead, the Egyptian one, the crocodile bites, and you know, after the three spheres. Dath is like a flower. It's like a flower, I guess. But it's losing the luster with age, you could say. Reverend is like a couple snakes entwined, and one's wearing a crown. So something Kundalini related to that, probably, right? But there's talk about like a fur and like injecting. So okay, yeah, this snake thing. And Leverick is it's like a heart symbol, but I think of it more of something like a heart that's been set up as a trap. That's probably what's going on there. And but it appears as ever young, so it's an ever young sort of thing. And Avermelech Cash, it's a sigil like some sort of stand or pole, and there's things connected to it. So it's like weapons are hung from it, but it serves like as a coat rack for the rest of it, or not a coat rack, but you know what I mean. That's what people usually have, those things, those poles with arms next to their entryway, if they have them at all. But you know, sort of a trinity entity. The Hapash, it's kind of like an hourglass that plants are growing over or around. So it's supposed to be the androgen. And Knopo is, I guess, signs on the top of a pole. And this relates to you know, established ways merging. And working on your whispers, working up your states and your imagined direction of all this can help change your feelings. Like, I would recommend that you follow the pathways in your body as you do these things, not just imagine things going on externally, but you know, that'd be worthwhile too. And of course, in his story, he's being congratulated by the entities as it goes on, which is often a way to get people into things. Is that, you know, you don't just, you know, you want to encourage them along the way. And there's difference between the death realms and the after and the spiritual realms between different traditions. So he goes into the Norse and the Persian, and of course the Persian has the thing about the whole antithesis. It's not quite the same thing as what you see in the West with the mention of Satan. But like the cover of the book says, this is about descent. And the symbols that you use aren't just things to worship various entities. They are things to open gateways to worlds, or activate something in you that connects to different things that maybe otherwise you wouldn't have connected to. But there's a talk here that Ozjahi and other entities cause what seems like sickness, like illusion, like delusion. And it just seems odd to trust the guidance of entities that seem not to be completely good and honest with you. Now, the difficulty being put through the trials to have experiences connecting with the blood moon, or whether you wait for those actual times to occur, certain other stuff related to phases of the moon and that sort of thing. The feminine and the negative, well, typically in the West, except for Islam and non-personified monotheism forms of Judaism, the divinity is put into, like in Christianity, it's typically put into an all-male trinity. And the feminine and the negative are demonized. So a lot of people, in order to get in touch with those aspects of existence, which aren't necessarily evil, or aren't necessarily ignorant, they turn to the dark side, as you could say, because these things have been excluded. And of course, we don't have to make a point of touching menstrual blood and stuff like that in order to get involved in that. I mean, and you don't have to use intoxicants towards things. Now, there's a point between the temporal and parietal lobe, around the temples. And if you reduce the function there by causing pressure, no, I'm not saying cause brain damage or something, and I guess people drinking would be more likely to have that experience, because they really did find out where that so-called schizophrenia stuff comes from relating to dead people. But from the Persian aspect, Ozjahi and Druj Nasu and all that, we are relating to just the kingdom of decay and the so-called impurities regarding death, are how the dead are treated, the remains of the dead are treated. Of course, in what they call Zoroastrianism, the main thing about death is that, the wicked who died are a burden on the living. But the dead, righteous who died, they, it's like, it's beneficial more so to do their rituals, but yeah, it's thought to be worse to delay a good person dying versus a bad person. A bad person's like, well, the world is supposed to have been relieved by their death. So, the funeral is actually more of a blessing for the other rather than just, oh, we got to get rid of this body. And the children of, just like the Bible actually says that in a way that you know that it's not literal. is this, you become a child of the devil, child of the god. It's really a choice. And so chapter 7 sets up a system of initiation. And we've seen this symbol before on the cover here of you don't, I'm not showing every single thing here. Okay, Devron, something about Devron in the illustration. And the first initiation just sets a basic set of directions, you could say. And repeating certain names over and over again, more than just verses or chants or something, is when it comes to the sihr, the evil magic, as a person would call it. It's a lot more part of it. Astwahid is related to the second one, which is like the distinguishing between one type of dead and another. The next initiation regards the process of death. A lot of this 4 black candle stuff, but I would say there probably should be a difference between them. And I'm thinking like the questioning when you die. Like some say, well, what's your religion? What's your prophet? What's your deity, or what's your idea of divinity? And occasional stuff like once a year, there's going to be a blood moon. Whether you can see it in your area, that's a different story. But, the feminine mysteries, having that be a next stage. Like in the Kabbalah, you got, it's really, one, feet, knees, hands, and then you got the pelvis. So again, so with the feet, the knees, and the hands are each as a separate one. This is what you're doing here. Now the 5th one, basically you're imagining killing an angel. Now these angels, if you really understand what a Ahura or Malaka or whatever is, you're going to know that these things are beyond, they're beyond gender. And just like other beings, they have respite. But there's a lot more involved here. Now, the Dogma of Angramenu are Michael W. Ford would have a deeper view into this and the whole system where, Ahramanic yoga, where you like you're working through the chakras really, but then there's real entities, right? To sort of replace what God would have. So, as I said, this book is definitely the satanic nature. A necromancer, in or beyond that, is someone between the realms, human society, animal society, shamanic states, regular states of life, the living, the dead, foots and different stuff. Through all the difficulties of what can take place, a person, wants to find your middle ground. So among extremes, you can survive. So you identify with all this stuff, but you're not, necessarily dying, again, some of these meditations here can be hard on a person psychologically because people are very much attached to the realm of the living, so Beelzebub, as an entity that is an entity. Now it's probably more related to wealth and copulation and stuff like this, but Baal Sebub would be the actual term here. But of course, the myth is that twists it's talking about, disease. So the idea is that the disease, the power over disease can help make you immune or something from the disease. And a lot of talk about root existence. Some people want to get used to physical defilement, not just some idea that sometimes it's best to have waiting periods between, getting back in touch with the community when handling dead bodies, particularly, like when plagues are going around. Sometimes you don't know if plague's going around, and, that's where stuff breaks out. So there's certain precautions in dealing with the dead, but this is sort of the opposite. You're forming an alliance and you're just, getting used to these things that would have detriment on yourself, people who don't bathe enough and all that other stuff. And it gets people, in line with entities. Auto sacrifice, not just in cutting oneself, but in, getting too skinny and all that sort of stuff, on purpose. But the people doing this sort of stuff, just like other principles, and you're awakening yourself there, and so therefore the angels are on your side, or that sort of stuff. So it's the same thing when it's demons, is that people are imagining and working through those areas of their body. And but it's about breaking through barriers. And some of this is done by cursing. Now, I wouldn't curse somebody just to curse someone or something. It's more about binding them from doing harm or preventing good, or that sort of thing. I don't think that's the right words to use in this context. Abaddon's mentioned. So Abaddon instead of Coronzone, are maybe even thought of as the same entity, is like the deep, the void of it. But Abaddon relates to a destruction. The utter, the utter, damnation of it all. And there's talk about a demon mask. Now, a demon mask can either be something that somebody wears just for particular rituals, or something that people, try to get possessed. And again, this communication with the dead is probably the shades of the dead, right? And Azazel, again, connecting with this idea of witchcraft, because, so this infernal book of necromancy is basically just a list of dark and evil sort of things. Saturn. So it's a collection of rituals in itself. Anuas, the dark descended master, connecting to other incarnate beings. Naas Alga Dabeh. I don't know if there's any actual Order of Nine Angles influence, but these three stars, from the Puppis system, and the Beh and Algol, they were thought of as dark gateways before that. And it does seem, Jason the Argonaut says, so it does seem that he's getting that mythology from more of a Greek source than indirect through that. And no, that star's done a bit different. There's, now, necromancy is something that has, that collects artifacts, jars and stuff that a person has dedicated, leaving things to rot in particular is one of those things that's famous from some of the African rituals and some of the stuff that made its way over towards America. Now, can a person enhance their spiritual space? Yes. Can a person immerse themselves in a consciousness like they're dead, and trying to awakening the sense of the smell and all that other stuff that goes on? Yeah. But the raising of the dead, well, again, it's the shades. So entities that either represent that they were witnesses, are entities that actually were witnesses. Now, how honest is what they have to say going to be, or how clear is it going to be? Who knows? And of course, a ghoul. In Islam, they don't believe that ghouls exist. In Sunni and Shia narrations, Muhammad said that ghouls don't exist. Now, people psychosomatically hurt themselves. Their beliefs can do stuff to them. But there's not really spirits that just pop out and hurt you and all that other stuff. Your own beliefs can do stuff to you, but now it's chapter 10. Now, Arabic has no V sound, but I think we're talking an area that has, people who speak French and stuff. So, shapeshifters, definitely shapeshifters. I've done a series about the Shayateen verses, about the Jinn verses, about the Iblis verses. So I'm going to leave that to that if you want a more organized thing than I'm doing here. Anybody can probably just understand. In the Semitic languages, you just can't say stuff backwards. That doesn't really do the thing. It's a sign of disrespect in this Western thing, like, oh, you just disorder it, and father father are, and that sort of stuff. Nima, depending on how you want to do it backwards, that's the thing that people do. Now, definitely blasphemy has its effect, but doesn't blasphemy imply a certain belief? And when he talks about Islam being a false religion, does he have any evidence? He definitely talks about how, well, he just doesn't believe the same way. That inverted prayers, well, yeah, see, you got to know Arabic to do that sort of stuff. You can't just say stuff backwards. And you can't just read the text backwards either, making out the sounds backwards. That just doesn't have the same meaning. It's like in Aramea and Hebrew, Yahweh is basically the same meaning when it's Huhe, because Huhe has the same root. And so existence that goes out, but not goes out in terms of it just loses its own existence or something. That's not what that means. And increasing existence, well, the entity that increases existence, so that yeah, a lot of that just doesn't make sense. But see, where are you going to get a human arm or a human leg or that sort of stuff? Grave goods, yeah. Animal skulls, that's a lot more reasonable thing of something to have. Finding a lava rock, that's more reasonable something to have. These beings are not incarnate, so they're not bound to these things. Now, they may stay around to please or to do some sort of work that they've been brought into. Okay. But yeah, this thing where people, so what you're going to get specifically, and this woman that that he encounters. What does the name basically means? Fornication? Is that what you're trying to say? Now, some prostitute of the desert that could have been that. Could have been a sorceress too. That makes as much sense as anything. But I that's the only thing really in here that I question that. But the people want a spiritual companion. So the witch is familiar. Yeah, sure, you have an animal, but having a spirit is far more of a thing. And by isolation and deprivation and causing certain breaks that way. Now the renunciation ritual, where you defile a set of scripture, again, that can be a dangerous thing. As much as Islam doesn't have penalties for blasphemy per se, you do blasphemy, you can upset people to the point where the reaction is against you by people is more than you can handle. And I don't mean just, break on through to the other side. I mean, like, break on through, maybe you're dead or they beat you disabled or in one way or another. That's just, don't mess with that. Because a person can say, well, I don't believe this, and dedicate themselves without that sort of stuff. Because I hear all this stuff about people, usually it's Bibles and stuff that people want to burn and go to the bathroom on or whatever. Menstrual blood and all that other stuff. But Islam is different when it comes to the sexual fluids. Sure, you wash up before the next prayer or something like that, but menstrual blood, postpartum women, the male and female that's had sexual release either through nocturnal emission or otherwise, they're not considered dirty. Dirty is not the term. So that mentality, doesn't quite fit in that thing. And the chants and stuff too, just like the cursing, this stuff goes through you. This stuff goes through you. So when you're swearing at things and you want to cause problems in people's lives, and honestly, Jinn magic, all Seher is Jinn magic. That's actually in the root of it, the working with the fire, you know, fire beings. It sounds different, but you know, what they call gods and goddesses, the male and female things, and the divs, the demons, it's all the same thing. And as he's saying, the blackened river of death, you know, into another and back and forth. So again, it's about this thing about Nergal. Of course, corn is not something we would have had. So this is a modern formula. Well, I mean, so much as it's a modern formula, but it's you know, putting the name in cuneiform. Yes, the Necronomicon, that's its representative, but the people who wrote the Simon Necronomicon and the other versions of the Necronomicon, I don't know, do any of them even know the difference between Akkadian and Sumerian and that sort of stuff? Because they kind of mix up the language and the mythology. So, you know, but getting a sacred tablet, consecrating it, and you don't have to make a statue as in terms of a graven image to have an idol. So that idea is right. And people have bat's blood oil because they don't have real bats. But some people will kill bats, people kill rats. And again, what does this do to the person, right? And again, all these other beings, these male and female beings, whatever you call them, they have choices too. But one thing that I would align with in terms of this all is that one spiritual path is about more than just you going about life. It's about bringing yourself past the points of no return, but willfully choosing, okay, yeah, this is, you know, this is where I'm going to direct that. Because obviously, opportunities go by and you don't have some of those opportunities ever again. And with so many people working on curses and plague meditations and imagining the world being destroyed with nuclear weapons and all that other stuff. I no, does he talk about nuclear weapons here? But you know what I mean. It creates a consciousness that probably makes it more likely. And the language that you use in rituals and meditations and all that, the ideas, you know, it goes beyond like just words and that sort of stuff. But the way that you communicate, it makes a difference, little by little. And once you open yourself towards one area of mythology, yeah, there's a permanent effect, but why not work on that and make that stronger if it's something worthwhile, whether it's a feeling or a concept or, you know, whatever. And, you know, just like working through the various themes of the tarot, one of the things that this thing does is, you know, you're relating to the various male and female categories. So you're not you know, limiting things to one set of gender categorizations. Now, a lot of that's overstated because it's not like everything is either male or female. That's kind of a silly approach, right? I mean, a couple things are right, but the rest of it, no. And when you have a temple established, it's important to somehow rededicate it. Some people will put incense. Some people have various elixirs. They give formulas of elixirs. And again, it's not just substances. There's a psychological, a spiritual thing related to that. And Ereshkigal, the one who goes into the underworld, Persephone, that sort of thing, but a little bit darker than Persephone. So I guess that's why we're using this one. Again, relating to stuff particular to that story, the hand, the hook, the bringing out without being trapped in. And again, hanging some hook and wandering around and circling around. You know, you can hurt yourself with a hook or someone else. So, you know, be smart about it. But again, immerse yourself in whatever ritual that you decide to do. I mean, it's your choice what you're going to do here. But I just, for example, don't see that it's necessary to do these particular things. But the working with ideas of toxicity, does this require physical toxicity? Not so much here. But working out this idea of everything that's rotten needs to be removed and purified. Some negative things can deal with that, just like chemotherapy is a horrible thing to do to your body if you don't, if you have a choice not to. There are other ways about that sort of thing, but we can't talk about that on this channel, right? But one of the things that we have, okay, we got the yoga, we got the tantra, we have the almost like opening, like, you know how people add stuff to their auras, or they try to? A lot of it's more like, okay, here's the sign in our group that you're going to know this and you're going to see this. So there's sort of a mesmerism sort of thing, but there's not at the same time. You can work the breath, the practices of sensation, the communication or reaction of the environment itself, the black flame, working with that. Now, the different things that is it really a new thing for people to say, I am God? I mean, people to assert that, no matter how much they may believe or not believe that they think that they are becoming and overtaking in order to get some sort of power through a harshness. Of course, that's, I guess, one of the main points here is there's a harshness and sort of a sickness that goes with it. It's not just cool little triangle stones with laws on it, right? There's more to being draconian than that. But west, east, south into Africa, ancient, modern, one of the things that is different is you don't have to physically be part of a spiritual path. And be able to use parts of it or reference it as sort of a energy, memory, and legacy of it all.